Hello and welcome back to my channel. I hope you are all ready for the next installment of the Kaiju Speculative Evolution series from Lizard King Productions. So sit back and relax and I will see you at the end of the video.
Back in the mid to late Cretaceous period, there were a species of aquatic reptiles known as the mosasaurs. This unique clade of reptiles could range in size and shape from the Mosasaurus hoffmanii to the small Dallosaurus turneri. One of these species of mosasaurs were known as Yagurosaurus. These reptiles were not as large as their giant cousins, however, they were formidable hunters of the coastal seas. It was discovered in the fossil record back in 1918. However, 34 years later in 1962, scientists discovered a species of Yagurosaurus in a formation that dates back to around 80 to 75 million years ago. What they found, paleontologists called Chitanosaurs. This group of Yagurosaurs were found in the southern parts of China, and 2 out of the 3 species dwarfed their cousins, the Yagurosaurs. What separated these species from one another were not just their size, it was also the sail this species had on their back and necks. Also, this species had bony knots above their orbital sockets. The first species found was the largest of the 3 odd aquatic reptiles. The Hydropalorosaurus was one of the kings of the open oceans. Its size alone allowed it to be in a position of top predator, only just below the larger mosasaurs that it shared the oceans with. These large aquatic reptiles were true monsters of the deep. Unlike their 2 smaller cousins, their dorsal sails were not very large. What their sails lacked in size was made up for girth. Looking at the spinous process that made up the sail on their back, it had sections where long and powerful muscle strains connected to them. This meant that the torso and midsection of the reptiles could bend and flex more akin to how snakes swim through the water. This allowed Hydropalorosaurus to effortlessly glide through the water and swim faster to catch its prey. This was also accompanied by their powerful paddle-shaped tails. The limbs of these massive reptiles were more flipper-like than their other cousins. These specialized flippers were used more like the flaps on the wings of a plane. It is hypothesized that they would give these reptiles a sudden burst in speed with a few thrusts to quickly overcome their prey, if needed. Looking at the neck of these creatures, scientists found something that they only thought was specific to one species of dinosaur. The Deinoceaneuteras, also known as the oceanic Godzillasaurus. What scientists found were primitive gills. However, these gills were more advanced and perfected by these reptiles. They could not stay down permanently, but from what the paleontologists could understand while studying the remains, these animals could remain underwater for a few days before they had to resurface to replenish their lungs with air. The gills could not make and produce enough oxygen to allow these amazing reptiles to linger for a longer span of time. This system had both pluses and minuses that came along with having these gills. The plus side was that it allowed these large reptiles to go deeper and stay down far longer to catch their prey and be able to ambush their prey without having to sacrifice coming up for air, unlike what their prey had to do. The minus, however, was when the Chitanosaur had to resurface, they had to remain at the surface for a long period of time to take in fresh air. This left them vulnerable to other predators that could take advantage of them while in this vulnerable state. And if they did not surface in time, they could potentially drown. The Hydropalorosaurus could reach lengths of 11.5 meters or 37.7 feet nose to tail. It is guesstimated by paleontologists to weigh anywhere between 12 to 14 tons or 24,000 to 28,000 pounds. The second species of Chitanosaurs that was discovered was the reef-dwelling Chitanosaur called Scapulamosaurus. This species was the smallest out of this odd group of marine reptiles. These creatures were so named due to their remains being found buried along with primitive corals and other aquatic life of the era. These sea-living reptiles could come ashore and go back out to sea like many other creatures that they shared the reefs with. Paleontologists came to learn that these creatures were solitary animals, kind of like our modern-day sea turtles, only coming together in great numbers to breed or come ashore to lay their eggs. What allowed these animals to haul themselves up onto land? we need to take a closer look at their feet. Unlike their two cousins who more flipper-like limbs, Scapulamosaurus had webbed feet. This allowed the digits of their feet to grip and get traction while moving along the shoreline. However, this did not mean that these creatures were not powerful swimmers. Looking at the skeletal structure of these creatures' tails, there is evidence that these reptiles had strong muscles that were capable of producing strong thrust. For body-to-length ratio, these reptiles had the longest tails out of the three Chitanosaurs. These animals' remains were found around China and parts of Europe. Which leads to another aspect of these animals. Let's take a closer look at the head of these strange reptiles. Paleontologists looked at the skull of these reptiles and noticed that it is very different from its other two cousins. Instead of a more box-shaped head, the Scapulamosaurus has a skull shaped similar to that of a horse. This discovery led to a thought which brings back the area these fossils were found. In Scotland there are myths and stories of creatures in the waters of both the freshwater lochs and the oceans. A creature the locals call a water horse. Paleontologists have been discovering, recently, that animals long thought to be extinct are now small pockets of surviving animals from a bygone era. Maybe, just maybe, the Scapulamosaurus is another species that somehow managed to survive the extinction of the dinosaurs. Paleontologists have theorized that it may be a similar situation as the Deinonychus. These animals were smaller than their cousins, but were longer than a full-grown man. These aquatic reptiles grew to be 4.3 meters, 14.1 feet, in length and could weigh anywhere between 955 to 1,065 pounds, 433.2 to 483.1 kilograms.
We interrupt this video for a brief announcement. We here at Lizard King Productions have noticed that 77% of you are watching this channel's content but have not subscribed yet. If you like these kind of videos and want to see more videos, would you consider subscribing to the channel? It really does help our channel grow and make it possible for more videos like this to happen. With that, back to the video.
The third species of Chitanosaur that was discovered was the brackish water-dwelling estuaryaurus. The fossils of these large reptiles were found in and round sediments of rock that once was mangrove-filled coastal rivers where salt water and fresh water meet. It is believed these creatures, as big as they were, could hide among the large tangled roots of the trees that dwelt within the brackish waters these animals called home. Thanks to their specialized adaptation of primitive gills, this allowed the estuaryaurus to stay under longer to not give away its position while hunting its prey. These creatures are solitary in nature from what scientists have concluded from the findings of these animals' fossils. From what can be figured out is that even their mating was violent and could even cause great harm to one another or even end up one of the two could even lose its life. The females grew larger than the males and were far more aggressive. How this was discovered was from strange marks on different bone fragments found in the fossils. These marks were made from the conical-shaped teeth of the same species. This evidence also showed that these animals were very aggressive and territorial. Scientists believe these reptiles had a territory up to 2 miles in circumference. Kind of similar to alligators and crocodiles of today. These reptiles could hunt either out in the shallow seas or up in rivers and deltas. Scientists also agree that these creatures could come out of the water, though, for a limited time. Their limbs could only support their great size on land for a small amount of time. So these animals would haul themselves up onto large tree roots that grew out from the waters of the estuaries they live in. These magnificent animals did have an offshoot from this specific species of Chitanosaurs that took a different evolutionary path that will be explored in a different video. For now, scientists have learned that these reptiles in particular were able to survive a few thousand years after the end of the dinosaurs before they finally succumbed to extinction. The estuaryaurus could grow 6.4 meters, 21 feet, in length and could weigh anywhere from 1,500 to 1,950 pounds, 680 to 885 kilograms.
Thank you for watching all the way to the end of this video. If you like this content, would you consider giving this video a like? It helps with the algorithm. Also, would you consider subscribing to the channel? The more subscribers, the more it helps this channel grow. Oh, And don't forget to turn on the notification bell if you want to be up to date on everything I post. And lastly, if you did like this video, consider sharing this video with your friends. They may just like the video you just watched as well. This is KT and I'll see you in the next video.